I'm glad to see you made it online, Deb. I just wanted to let you know that Councilmember Dodwell is going to try to join. She is serving her community right now and is at a neighborhood meeting, HOA meeting, so she's going to try to make it. Unfortunately, Dan had a commitment scheduled prior to being assigned this committee, so he's just doing the best he can today. But I'm glad to see your lovely faces. Happy Tuesday. It's May 25th. Let's call the roll, please, Miss Patrick.
Chair Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell, we know will be here later. Councilmember Flashar is out. Councilmember Galani.
Here.
Councilmember Jaxie.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Okay, meeting is called to order. So, do we have a motion to approve the minutes on the floor? Made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Jaxie. Any changes to the minutes? Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, non-debate, well, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain. Motion carries. Julian, do we have anyone here to publicly comment?
The one individual we have here tonight is Councilmember Garitano. He has not raised a hand or posted in the chat box, but if you would like to speak, I'd ask him to please raise your hand or post in the chat.
We'll give him a, oh, no comments. All right, thank you, Councilmember Garitano. All right, seeing no one else, and certainly let me know if somebody comes shortly, we can always reopen it back up. Doesn't sound like there will be, so we're ready to move on to our first 4 action items. So I will go ahead and start with the introduction and let Julian take over. So hopefully you had a chance to look at the memo. Julian provided a great cover letter, and then I provided the kind of the impetus for why this was on the agenda in the first place. So if you're not sure about my background, and most of you are at this point on this committee, I do have some graduate level experience in economic development and rural development policy, but not near anything like the specialty that Julian has as Economic Development Director and his wonderful certifications. And we are very lucky to have him, and it should be recognized that he has certifications be of and beyond the call of duty. So I just want to clarify that first. And what I'm suggesting is not in competition with that. The way I see our staff is we are only as good as a city as we are able to hire and retain good staff and to enable them to do their jobs well, and in turn for them to enable us. And the way to do that is to really, in my mind, lay good foundations for education, for our council members to make good decisions, right? So we can sort of control Julian's stress level, right, as a council, and certainly Steve's and Director Vunich's as well. God bless you guys, right? So since I've been on council, and I know there's been a lot of turnover, but what I have seen is a very progressive, in a good way, mood change and kind of a temperature change. In years prior, there was an attitude of we don't need anything in economic development at all, and I don't believe it's important. I've heard that phrase said a lot by elected officials. And I also realized that as a elected group, we didn't have a good working body definition of what economic development was. So for a lot of people, the definition was just that Julian's job was to just network with businesses, and that's it. And the problem is if you don't understand what's coming down the line to make good decisions, we're going to be really unprepared as an elected body, because we will eventually have a period of rapid but contained development, right? We have good planning and zoning, we have guardrails in place, but we will be asked eventually by developers, by people purchasing, to make decisions about if we want to provide incentives, if we like that, what we do provide, and we need to be really prepared as a council. So what I've kind of witnessed is kind of knowledge loss as people move in and off committees and in and off council, right? So we have short terms, people may not run again. Unfortunately, we have a vacancy right now because Councilmember Remy is not with us anymore, so that's a perfect example. I may no longer be on this committee. Special, shout out to Councilmember Clark and Jaxie. They put in the time with me on UMSL's class. So there are opportunities for individuals to do extra work. The problem is it's an extra commitment. It may not work with your schedule. And especially if it's held at UMSL physically, that's asking a lot out of you guys to expect that. So what I did was I looked at my time on historic preservation. So I know Councilmember Clark's been a liaison, Councilmember Galani. Deb, have you been a, no, okay. So historic preservation, and Joe can always add to this as well, has a wonderful certification program where they've built in the application process and CEUs into the body of the work of the committee. So they're not asking committee members to do extra work and spend extra time. It becomes wrapped into the committee agenda. And if you'll notice, we traditionally have lighter committee agendas as compared to perhaps like admin and public works. So we can certainly wrap that in. I'm not asking for more time. I'm just asking us to plan stuff in the future. So there's a couple different ways about this, and what you'll see from the attachment is that Julian did some research. Again, he provided the types of certificates that are already developed for professionals like himself. What I came in with was, hey, one, does a program exist so that we can be a certified, community, a certified city, not just a certified economic development manager? Just like we're a certified historic preservation community. And if a program doesn't exist, what's it going to take to start one? Let's be innovative. Let's get out in front of it. I certainly saw success and interest with the work Councilmember Clark and Jaxie and I have been doing. So let's see what we can kind of do. So that's kind of what I tasked Julian with, and I wanted to bring it to you guys and to get some feedback on it. So what you can see in the attachment is that a state already did it before us, so Nebraska. So we can see that there is a successful model, not asking for anything to be a fiscal note. What I would love to see tonight, if you guys are interested, Julian is on the State Missouri Economic Development Council. They're going to have a meeting that's going to come up at I believe, next month. So this is perfect timing. So if we want to approach the state and say, would you develop a program for us? We have the perfect opportunity and timing to do that right now and to put some feelers out and see if they're interested in doing this. Then once we get the ball rolling, there's ways to tailor this so that we can have discussions and education on something that specifically helps with our community as well. That's just a little down the road. So Julian, would you like to kind of add to everything I just said?
Sure. I appreciate it, Chair and members of the committee. Hopefully the information I provided to everybody helps provide a little bit of background data on this request. Wanted to make sure that as we're talking about what Chair Eden's brought forward as far as potentially pursuing some kind of designation as a city, not just a professional and not just for an elected official, but as a city, pursuing some kind of certified economic development recognition, that there are certain levels of certificates and certifications that already exist, both for professionals and for elected officials. This was just provide some background so that you all in this request from Chair Edens know that there is some types of certification programs that already exist locally and nationwide and even globally. Just to not get into too much of the details on each of them, for professionals, there's the CECD, the Certified Economic Developer certification from the International Economic Development Council. There's the Economic Development Finance Professional, EDFP. And more recently, and I think specific to this conversation, the state of Missouri, both the Missouri Economic Development Council, MEDC, and the State Department of Economic Development just created their first ever statewide Missouri Certified Economic Development. So there are three really best examples right now of higher level certification programs that full-time professionals in the state and the country can pursue for their own professional recognition. What we're talking about is not in any way attached to a professional. What we're talking about is attached to the city, so the city of Wildwood can be recognized, not just a professional or a full-time economic development manager. Beyond that, there are two programs, one regionally and one even beyond the state level, that are more geared towards elected officials. Council members Edens, Jaxie, and Clark just completed the UMSL program. There's a similar version that Heartland, it's called the Heartland's Economic Development course that's offered. It's in Kansas City every year. It's offered by the University of Northern Iowa. That is similar to the UMSL program. It's a little bit more enhanced. It goes over a few more weeks. The content is a little bit deeper dive in detail, but those two are really geared more towards elected officials, citizens, some entry-level staff. It's more fundamentals than it is the real detailed aspect of what would be expected to be in the professional certifications. And then just because we're talking about the city instead of a professional or a official, there is also an existing accredited economic offered by IEDC, and that's more for large chambers, like the St. Louis Regional Chamber is an AEDO. Large, huge, growing suburban cities with massive amounts of growth for huge employers and call centers and distribution centers like the St. Charles, Missouri's even, those are AEDOs. What Chair Edens has brought forward is at least a request to have the city look at, because it doesn't already exist, petitioning the state of Missouri to at least explore the idea of, is a city recognition a worthwhile thing to pursue at the state level. This type of recognition does not currently exist. As I mentioned, the state has just created their first ever certified economic developer program this year. I think it just got rolled out in the last month or two, with the first exams coming up later this year. So the state has already taken the initiative to create their first ever professional certification. But the request now is if it's worthwhile to pursue, to bring forward to the state to see if the state would be supportive of any kind of statewide recognition or certification for the city as a whole. So that information was mainly provided so that you all can hopefully see the difference between what Chair Edens has brought forward as far as the city proposing to pursue this at the state level versus what the other existing certification programs already are, both for professionals and also for elected officials. And I'll kick it back to Chair Edens in a second, but I think the genesis behind this, beyond just showing that we as a city know what we're doing, we're established, we follow best practices, also more for, as she indicated, like succession planning. So in a future time where certain council members or certain staff are no longer here, that the city carries with it that recognition, so that we are seen from the state level, at least as a group and an organization that is doing our job well, and the city is recognized in that capacity. And as she mentioned, the state of Nebraska has already created that program in the past, which, based off some research, was the only city I found that at least had done so. But that's at least the information I provided to back up the request from Chair Edens, and I'll kick it back to her.
I just want to say that when I say certification, I'm not talking about a test or homework for us. So I just wanted to make that clear. This is a continual process, even though we go through the revolving doors ourselves of leaving the council or leaving the committee as well. So this is adding the guardrails in the future for good decision making, and I think it's a chance to be innovative and have some good PR, but two, what a great way to signal to anybody interested in development that we actually know what we're doing and have some devoted resources. Because I'll tell you from my experience with UMSL is that not a lot of cities have someone like Julian or someone like Joe or someone like Steve that have the experience. It was very eye-opening to see what some other cities are dealing with, and I'm sure Rob and Teresa can add to that. So I see Rob has his hand up. Anybody else? And I'll go in order. Okay, Rob, go ahead and kick it off.
No, I just wanted to ask, so you brought up the idea of approaching the state to create some sort of a certification program. Have you approached, Julian, any of the other cities that might have an economic development, either position or committee or anything like that, to find out if there's any interest there? I just assume that would be a question that you get from the state pretty quickly. Out of curiosity, if anybody else sees some benefit in it.
I have not broached it with any other cities in our region yet. The intent was to, at least at this meeting, see if it's a concept that this committee would support before taking it to the next level. And I mentioned taking it to state officials, but regional would be the same, just to see if there's an interest level. So I was waiting to see what this committee had to think about it before bringing it to that next step and talking to anybody else outside of Wildwood.
So I read your memo. In your memo, you talked about, I feel like I read in there that the Nebraska example, there were examples in there of cities that saw benefits to it. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and so the Nebraska example, just because that's the state I could find that has done this in the past, there are, it looks like at the time that the website was most recently updated from the State Department of Economic Development, Nebraska, there are 40 communities in Nebraska that hold the EDCC, which is the Economic Development Certified Community Designation. So that's intended to kind of make your city stand out among the rest, to show that each of those 40 communities have completed the application as necessary, pursued their recertification with the state, that they have the correct support system in place, they have full-time staff, they have plans and strategic plans and long-term plans in place. They're meeting certain goals. They can document to the state why they believe they're worthy of maintaining that designation. And then I think as these cities have identified is that this is just directly from the state's website, that they display a high level of economic readiness, economic development readiness, and they have strong infrastructure with great qualities. So I think the intent is that as a certified community at the state level, you are that much more appealing for new business, for new development, for pursuing a new location for your business, because the city has completed that process to show that they are more well-suited for business. They have the right tools in place. They have the correct staff in place. It's meant to be more of a marketing asset for your community to help generate additional interest.
Okay, I've got Councilmember McCutcheon followed by Councilmember Clark. Take it away, Deb.
So I have a couple questions. One, cost. What is the cost involved? And because we do have revolving doors with council members, the council members or elected officials that would be trained in this would also be revolving the doors. So how do you think that the process and the training is going to be sustained? And what kind of training would that be for city council members? Would it be during council sessions, work sessions? How are you planning on going about that?
Sure. So as the memo indicated, it would mirror a little bit of what historic preservation does. So for anybody that's not on the committee, they are required by the certification process to have continuing education. So presenters come to those meetings and take time up, so it's not an additional meeting. It's built into the schedule. And depending on how the state wants to run the program, that could be quarterly, that could be twice a year. We'd have to see kind of what they're interested in doing. So until we really go to the state, I'm not sure that this would even have a fiscal note at all. It might be something that there's no even application costs. I'm not sure yet. So this is really just authorization to enter into those discussions. But that's how it would be sustained. So that at least 8 members of the council at all times are getting some level of continuing education in economic development. And then it doesn't have to be the same classes. It can be continually new topics, right? There's for example, in the UMSL class that we did, we had an entire series on some interesting things that were happening downtown in St. Louis. So that's a very current, timely topic. So 3 years from now, that presentation won't even be relevant. So there's always opportunity for something new, not reinventing the wheel. But that's how we would catch that revolving door, right? Kind of the same way HBC does. Did I answer all 3 of your questions okay, Deb? Did I leave anything out? Okay. Joe, did you have anything to add about the HPC process? And then I've got Clark and then Cross. No, did I do okay on that? I hope I didn't butcher it. I had a very excellent seminar on historic trees and state parks, but one of my degrees is in history and I'm a big nerd, so I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and that says a lot about my personality. City Administrator Cross, are you okay waiting for Councilmember Clark?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay, Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, but I think you've pretty well answered my question. I was just going to ask if you see this as a set curriculum or series of classes, or like HPC, do you just let the committee select what the subject is, the topic is of interest or of current need to per year?
Sure. Well, so both. So the way I explained it to Julian is I was hoping that the state would have some sort of preset class package. So like you and I had theory classes together, right? So some of that will evolve, but those basics pretty much can stay the same and be retaught. The way I saw this was the state or insert whoever wants to work with us that provides a base level of curriculum. Then what I would ask was the opportunity to do something like University of Missouri does with their honors college. They call it honors by contract, for example. So if, ask me how I know about those, but if you cannot find a class, for example, that's applicable in the honors college or gives you the credit you need perhaps in your major, you enter into a contract with the professor as an individual willing to do extra work that would give you an honors credit. So what I would expect is, in addition to maybe some preset courses that make it very easy for us to contact someone or for Julian to use a PowerPoint, is that we go to the state and say, hey, we really want to learn about this. We found a speaker. Will you give us credit for this class? And they say, check, 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 check. Yep, counts as a credit. Goes towards recertification. So to answer your question in a really long way, both. I'm looking for some flexibility, things that can help us specifically as a community, but also that kind of potential for the preset, not reinventing the wheel process. And that's good because it can provide a standard, right? So that our certification means the same thing as another city certification.
Well, I was just asking that because I was thinking that when we go and present this, when you do, because you're the best presenter, you and Julian, that the purpose, the goal in mind, it might be easier to for someone to accept it if there's a specific goal that the classes meet other than just we want to have a certification. That's all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things I mentioned to Julian is that since the state has already worked really hard to start their own professional certification program, maybe they already have something in place that can be the watered down version that could mirror it at the same time. So I'd be interested to hear in their suggestions, but I'm thinking exactly along the same path that you are. Really good comments, great questions. Anybody else? No? Okay, well, thanks for listening to my hairy brainchild.
Chair Evans, you forgot to go back to Steve.
I'm so sorry, City Administrator Cross. I apologize.
No, I had a question, but I know it's been answered, so I'm good. But thank you anyway. I appreciate it.
Okay, so what we're looking for tonight is just authorization for Julian to make inquiries, present this at his meeting next month with to the state. Get, you know, if he would like to do this now or in between, we can roll into the motion asking other communities if they're interested. I would expect him to come back with yes, they're interested, no, they're not, maybe, and if they have preset ideas in mind or if they have a fiscal note that they are expecting to pass along to cities. So would someone be interested in making a motion to that effect? Councilmember Clark, go ahead.
Just one more question about it.
Sure.
Is there anything that we need to clear through Attorney Young?
Great question. Julian?
Not as far as I'm aware. I'll defer to Steve, though.
Councilmember Clark, in what regard do you say do we need to run something by Mr. Young? I will say, I mean, it's very early in the process, and obviously a lot of homework and a lot of research still needs to be done about this program. The one note of caution that I would, and if we start talking about training, and I think I heard that a couple times, and I've said this before, I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. The city cannot require council members to take any training at all. There's nothing in the job description, if you will, of a council member. It's voluntary, just as the three of you did with regards to OMSL. But for instance, if it would turn out that the state said, well, we need, your economic development committee to all have training and so forth, I just want to just caution you that there's nothing that I as a city administrator or anyone can make a requirement of a council member to take training. So I don't know, Councilmember Clark, what other issues you may be referring to that need to be brought before the city attorney?
That is exactly what I was thinking about, was the training in the elected officials. And does any of this interfere with, or does it augment the training that you as the city administrator have for your team?
Well, a couple things with regards to training for staff, that's within my purview, of course, in terms of what kind of training they need and when and those types of things. This is outside that scope as regards to staff training. Now, obviously, I would direct Julian's activities in terms of training and that sort of thing. That's a conversation between he and I. But no, what you're talking about here would not interfere with anything related to staff. Nor at this point, which is way early in the game, do I see it augmenting anything other than, and that I would defer to Julian with regards to. So my comment strictly has to do with elected officials, because that's a pretty important piece of information to know, that the city cannot require any training of a city official. Now, there's one caveat to that. Potentially, and this is a potential, and this is something that the city attorney and I have discussed, that potentially there could be some training with regards to, perhaps some HR training and so forth. And so given the fact that elected officials have a city asset, there may be some training about how to use that asset or how to protect that asset. That's something that we might require, but something like this would be outside the scope of that. And it would be strictly a voluntary thing for an elected official if they chose, just like you and the Colonel and Laura did with regards to the UMSL training.
And I will add, if it's okay, real briefly. Sorry.
I was just going to elaborate too and say that the way I'm seeing this structure is you're not getting an individual certification as a council member. It's the city as a whole, which will likely be done at the committee level. So working pretty much the same way as the HPC committee does, which if you have a quorum for the meeting, because it's happening during the meeting, it's really a presentation where you ask questions, you're already completing it. So I think the word training, although it is a training in a field, is perhaps not, we might be getting down into the weeds on what I really mean more of as participation.
Okay.
If that makes sense, I'm not asking us to be individually certified. I'm just hoping that you're going to show up to the meeting where the material is presented, and by the level of participation in the city. So having a quorum, meaning you can conduct a meeting, and the committee has so many education, whatever units that the state requires, we completed it. So definitely don't mean it in the same way as other certifications. I hope that cleared it up. You're kind of going to many class. Julian and Councilmember McCutcheon, did I clear that up a little bit? Okay.
And briefly, just to add on to that, as we mentioned earlier, a program of this kind does not currently exist in the state. So it's really hard to say what the requirements may or may not be for it, since it currently does not exist in any capacity for Missouri. As a comparison, the Missouri Certified Economic Development Program that was recently rolled out, they created it from scratch. I'm sure they looked at some best practices from other states that have done similar programs, but I know the people that created it, and they started it from the very beginning. They wrote the exam, they came up with the courses, these individuals who oversaw the process started it from nothing and they created it, and now it's being rolled out. So it's hard to necessarily look too much or too closely right now at what potential cost might be or won't be, what types of professional development or training or ongoing continuing education might be a part of it. There is, if we're using Nebraska, just because that was the example that we found online, at least in this instance, the state of Nebraska treats applications as an official request for proposal. So pretty much the cities are submitting proposals to the state to be considered as a certified economic development community or an EDCC. So the applications that are submitted are the city's opportunity to submit their credentials to the state to be declared as meeting the requirements for a EDCC as the state of Nebraska has identified. I don't think that necessarily means you need to check every box. You need to provide every different list of the probably 25 to 30 different subparts that are included within the application, but I think you need to meet a certain minimum portion of them to be considered for the recognition. So there is a part, I think it's part 15 of the application, that does identify economic development training and continuing education. So for this example, it says provide a list of economic development trainings and continuing education opportunities the economic development staff, committee members, and community members have participated in within the past 3 years, and may include but are not limited to briefings, marketing, economic development association groups, conferences, et cetera. So this is just one piece of an application that shows that we're qualified to be considered for that designation, but it's not necessarily a requirement as much as it is us as a city trying to put together the best application or proposal to the state of Missouri to be considered. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
I've got Councilmember McCutcheon followed by Councilmember Clark.
So I'm still having a little bit of trouble wrapping my head around this totally. So while you're going to the state and asking questions, Julian, so would it be more beneficial for us to do this as a whole council, maybe by quarter sessions, like during a work session time? Because we do come and go, and the 8 of us that's on this committee may all be the ones that are up for re-election. So I'm wondering what's, I would like us to get the most value out of this. I believe in learning and continuing learning. I'm in education, but I want to make sure it's a valuable experience across the board. So I'm just not wanting it to be, okay, the committee for this year is getting this information, and that may not be the same members as the committee is next year. And so the first set of elected officials for that committee, they don't end up with the same knowledge or the knowledge long-term and comprehensively as we could possibly do as a council. So I was, maybe there's a quarterly session or something the council can do as a whole. Just my thought is I think it'd be more valuable that way, and there'd be more continuity to it as a session. So if you can ask those questions, I'd appreciate that.
Will do.
I really appreciate it. I kind of struggled with that when I wrote the email, and I wasn't sure if anybody would go for that. I'm very flexible. I'm excited at the opportunities, and I like you want to make sure it's worthwhile. It's really and what you pointed out is good. We want minimal repetition, but some things will need to be said over so that every council member hears that, or at least a background provided in some sort of working document that people can look at in the future. But theoretically, if we do this right, all we have to do is show up and put our thinking caps on and work together as a community to participate. Councilmember Clark.
Yes, you answered my questions very well, all of you, and I feel very confident about this. At this point, there's no cost involved, and whether it's council or I don't know how with our 5-minute, I don't know how it'll all work with the council, but it works very well with HPC. Bringing someone in and inviting anyone from the council can come to these meetings, and some people did, for like when Dr. Hammer gave his presentation. So I would move that we move forward with this and ask Jillian to go ahead and present this.
Seconded by Council Jaxie. Any additional discussion? Mike, I just want to make sure that you're on there. Great. We need you for quorum for voting. So we want to just try this by consent. So all in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed, abstained. All right, we're good to go. So thank you guys. I'm really excited. Hopefully we'll get some great news. And I love it when I finally have an idea that's very cheap and requires little to no staff work. So I'm gonna keep trying on that track. And as always, if you guys have ideas and want to present something on the agenda, you know, just a shout out. I'd love to work with you on anything. So we've got a couple for information items. We're doing great on time. Julian, would you like to talk about the update on the manager's report for us?
Sure. Appreciate it, Chair Edens, members of the committee. Hopefully, most of these items on this month's report are not all too new for each of you. I think some of the major highlights of this month's report, one that's brand new to this month, finally, after working on the lease for the better part of, I'd say, the last year, we're finally at a point now where Heels Boutique has announced their move, the relocation from their current location on 174 Plaza Drive, which is just behind the new Milk and Honey. They're moving across the street to the space immediately next door to Starbucks. You know, this move has been in the works for the better part of the last year, but they just executed their lease last week. They are planning to do most of the work this summer on rehabbing the new space, and they'll be moving in probably later this summer. So I definitely want to congratulate the owner on all the hard work that she's done on negotiating that lease and getting to this point, because it's definitely taken a long time to get there. Many of us were at a ribbon cutting and grand opening a week ago Saturday for Code Ninjas, who has reopened at their location with new owners. There are Facebook photos and stuff like that out there already. If any of you are interested, the grand opening for the new or the now this year's version of the Zip Tour is happening next Friday at Hidden Valley. They're reopening the Zip Tour for the summer season with scenic chairlift rides and hiking trails. That'll be going from 9:30 till 3:30 next Friday. And we're working with Hidden Valley right now and helping promote that to the community. As of this coming Monday, the 31st, Wildwood Yoga will be closing their current location next to Wildwood Pub to get ready to move across 109 to a new larger space in the Westridge Office Center by Rockwood Bank and those buildings on the other side of 109 from the current location. She'll be moving from about 1,200 square feet to about 2,600 square feet. So more than doubling the size of her facility and adding a secondary yoga classroom as well, which will definitely help her out and allow her to cater to more students. I think the only one that's not on here for a reason is as of yesterday, a potential new user has come to terms on the Llewellyn space. So they have not signed a lease yet, but there is a group that as of yesterday has agreed on terms. We're waiting until they have a signed lease in hand to make any announcements. But as of yesterday, there is a group that has gotten farther than anybody and has come to terms with Dierbergs. And so we hope within, I'd say, the next couple of weeks to have a signed lease, and we'll be helping make an announcement to the community for that. But in addition to those, just regular ongoing events and meetings with businesses, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I actually do have a question on behalf of Dan. He would like to know if there have been any updates on the old Jack in the Box.
I talked to one user yesterday who was interested. That's the update.
Oh, okay, I will pass that along. All right, any other questions? Okay, I told Steve Cross found this out, and my shame, I accidentally showed up for work session at 5 yesterday. And so doing my responsible duty on economic development, naturally I went shopping at Heels for my extra time. So I want you all to know that I did my work and got a dress yesterday. But no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, if you get a chance to stop by and talk to Rosemary and wish her luck on her move and just support her in the reopening, that would be wonderful. If you haven't looked at Code Ninjas, I was able to attend the grand, well, it's essentially almost like a reopening, but with the mayor and Joe Garitano, and it is an awesome facility. So please spread the word if you know children that are interested in coding. There's 2 different age groups of programs, and they may start something for adults earlier. So I would, I'm sure, be in the remedial class if I ever did it. But Councilmember Dodwell just joining us. We just finished up the manager's update. Did you have any questions, comments, concerns? None. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Seeing none. Rolling right along. Julian, take it away with the update on the bicycle benefits program.
Thank you, Chair Edens. At the last meeting, the committee authorized us to send the invitation letters out to all Wildwood business owners. So following the last meeting, we worked with the resident volunteer Hugh Share to draft the letter, which would be sent out to all business owners. And on May 10th, we mailed the invitation letter to 225 Wildwood retail and office businesses, requesting their participation. And not only that, Hugh, the volunteer, volunteered to pay for the first 10 starter kits out of the gate. So the first 10 businesses that were signing up are now doing so for free and receiving their starter kit at no cost. And Hugh has volunteered to pay for that and sponsor those first 10 to make sure we have a nice launch and have a few businesses signing up out of the gate to get the program started. I know as of today, there were 7 that had already signed up. We initially told the businesses to let us know by this Friday, the 28th. We'll be doing some follow-up tomorrow and the next day with business owners. And I know Hugh has already volunteered to start going door to door and start rallying troops and get people on board, maybe those that don't check their mail or read their email. But so with the committee's authorization last month, we did mail out the letter. A copy of that letter is included in the packet for all of your information. I also, within that attachment, included a copy of the follow-up email that we had sent to all the business owners dated May 19th, which was about a week and a half after the letters were sent out via mail. And Hugh did include a small, just kind of PowerPoint presentation that we packaged and included as an attachment with the email that was sent out to all business owners as part of that follow-up. So based off the vote that occurred at last month's committee meeting, the committee gave us that authorization, but did ask us to bring these materials back to the committee so that you all can see them for your information as we move forward with the program. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Clark.
Julian, I asked this question before, but do you know if this is this group is a nonprofit group, an NGO, or is this a public group? I don't know what this is.
Yeah, I recall that question. I think Hugh had looked into that because I know he was on the call the last time that came up. I'll have to go back and check again, but I thought I remembered seeing an email what their registration status was.
I think they were a 501c3 nonprofit, but I believe, but we'll double check again. Also, I would just like to say a thank you to Mr. Hugh Share, who is proving to be a very active coordinator, and perhaps he will be interested in working on something else in the future with us. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Excuse me, I have a cough drop in my mouth, allergies, but is there any cost to the city for this program?
None.
None? Thank you.
Okay, so perhaps we can ask Julian to follow up in an email and confirm that they are a nonprofit. Would that be okay, Councilmember Clark? Okay, perfect. Anything else before we move on? Okay, seeing nothing. We've got the for information on the economic development guide, just that no action is required this month. Julian, would you like to add to that?
Correct, and I will just mention briefly, I found the email from Hugh, and he said that Bike Benefits is a LLC with 1 paid employee and some part-time web assistants. So that's the response we got back.
Okay, I was wrong. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, so briefly on the update to the guide, as you might see in the attached schedule of events, the May meeting is one of few where there is not a required action on behalf of the committee for the process to update the guide document. I included a cover letter just to summarize the work that is currently being done. Even though this committee is not actively doing anything today at today's meeting, there's a lot happening in the background. We are drafting the updated text graphics for the update to the guide. There are 2 chapters that are scheduled to be presented in draft form to the committee at the next meeting in June. So we are updating that text and graphics right now to present at the June meeting. Also, we have begun scheduling and conducting the interviews with all the stakeholders. Out of the 15 or 16 that we identified, 7 have already been either scheduled or conducted already. So we've already been receiving a lot of feedback based off the questions that were approved at the last committee meeting. And so even though those the feedback provided by the stakeholders in those meetings will not be made public as it currently stands, a summary of that feedback will be provided to protect the comments provided by those businesses at a future meeting. I believe the feedback will be provided at the August meeting once it's summarized for the committee's review. But as we said, the feedback is intended to be open and honest, but to protect their interests, we want to make sure that that feedback is given anonymously to the committee. So we're actively holding those interviews and collecting that feedback, but I'm happy to answer any questions on our current progress.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Have you been getting positive feedback up to this point with those businesses that you have talked to?
Yeah, overall, definitely positive feedback. I make sure as an introduction to the interview that the feedback is intended to be as honest as possible and that we would appreciate every feedback they have, even the negative parts. And so some of the questions are intentionally written to ask, what can we do better? What can the city do better to support your business? Are there initiatives that we can add to better enhance your business? What challenges do you have? So we're intentionally crafting those questions to get some constructive criticism. So in that way, yes, we have gotten some feedback that has been constructive, but very welcome, and I think would be very helpful towards this process.
Great. I'm glad they're being forthcoming both on the positive and the negative. That's good, or the less than positive, I'm sure.
Correct. And Cherry, you wanted to jump in on that question that came up in chat?
Yes, did you want to just respond? I know we've already moved on.
Yep, so Councilmember Garitano posted in chat from the last topic of the bike benefits program. He mentioned the city is covering the cost of the first 10 businesses starter kits, value of $267.50. It's actually a huge share, our resident volunteer, who is the one that brought the program to us, that is covering that cost of $267.50. So the city is not paying anything.
Just wanted to clear up any confusion. Okay. Oh, it says planning and parks raise. Oh, Joe, sorry. Joe Vunich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julian, any idea on the census data when you might see some of it?
I wish I had an answer for that, Joe. I know based off the scheduling that we found, and Steve Cross may have better information than I have, but when we were first putting the schedule together earlier this year, it was very challenging to find any definitive schedule from the government. I don't know if that's hard to believe or not, but the only data I found showed that the initial nationwide population counts were supposed to be delivered to the president in April, and that redistricting counts would be sent to the state in September. And as of today, I haven't seen anything more current or updated from that, but we're definitely following it closely. And unless Steve has anything different from that.
No, the last I've heard was around September, October in the fall, and haven't heard anything. Certainly it's not going to be sooner than that. Excuse me. So it's going to be at least the fall. I would expect it certainly to be before the end of the year. So I think the fall is probably a good estimate right now.
Well, thank you both, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Rob, saw your hand up. It disappeared.
Actually, Joe asked my question, but then I thought before I asked it, and so I thought I'd go out and check the census. Right now, the Census Bureau is saying August 16th is when they intend on states receiving the data they need to begin the redistricting. But then they further go down later on and say September 30th is when they'll get final redistricting data toolkit. So whatever. Like Julian said, it's the federal government. You can't really count on them. They do give me a paycheck though, so.
Best not bite the hand that feeds you too hard, right? Yeah, okay. All right, well, folks, unless there's anything else, we don't have any not ready for action in terms of other business news and updates. We are not to the point yet in Public Works where we've had an update where we've approached a business or a hotel to ask their opinion about an electric charging port, unless City Administrator Cross has anything to add. We're kind of not ready to add it as a for information item on this agenda yet, but maybe by next month.
The update that I can give to you is that Mr. Vunich, Mr. Brown, and I met last week to discuss the issue. And part of that discussion had to do with location, potential locations, plural, within town center. And so, and a couple other things that we need to talk about. So I have asked Mr. Brown to reach out to the consultant that Ameren provided or gave us to meet and talk about power distribution where on Long Main Street. But there's a whole, excuse me, a lot of issues. It is on the agenda to be discussed, at least to provide the same kind of an update to the admin PW committee next Tuesday. But I also have asked Mr. Brown to reach out to Ameren and to get a couple other names of potential providers of folks that put in the charging station so that we can get some competitive quotes and not just have one quote. So we're just kind of going down the road. We'll provide the same update, as I say, to the admin PW on Tuesday, but lots of things still need to be done before we're ready to really start making some definitive decisions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Cross. Just like I said, like he said, moving parts right now. We will keep you updated in the committee if we're going to be approaching businesses in the future. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close. Oh, Julian.
I just want to congratulate our 3 graduates who recently completed the UMSL program. Councilmembers Edens, Jackson, and Clark are all now recipients of their chancellor certificate, so congrats.
Yes, we forgot to wear our caps and gowns, but next time we'll.
I heard enough pomp and circumstance last night for this year for sure.
And then some, I'm sure. Man, that's the song that won't quit. Lots of chorus repeats. All right. Anyone want to make a motion to close? Councilmember Jaxie, I need a second. Councilmember Clark, I know you're so excited to stay on here for the rest of the night, but we got to get you off. Non-debatable. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. All right, y'all, we did this in under an hour. It might be a record. It was also very productive, and we may have launched a new program and been the first ones to do it in the state. So congratulations. Hopefully something will come out of it. So